You're watching ChillyBoy Productions. I'm Larry ChillyBoy Chilson, and this is my ranking for all 23 Disney live-action remakes. Now, before we get into this ranking, make sure to go ahead and click that subscribe button down below so that you can chill with me on each and every one of my latest videos. So, with the release of Disney's The Little Mermaid in theaters, I thought it was time to update my live action remake slash fairy tale list. Now, I can't completely quantify this as a Disney remake list because I am going to include Oz the Great and Powerful and sequels or prequels such as Cruella or 102 Dalmatians, Alice Through the Looking Glass. However, I will not be including The Sorcerer's Stone because, well, no. So that left me with 23 films to rank. It's quite a bit. Remember, this is just my own personal ranking, and if I'm being quite honest, most all of these are quite disappointing, with a few exceptions. But it's just my opinion, just my thoughts as we move through, and I cannot wait to see how you rank these films in the comment section down below. So we have a lot to talk about. Let's cut the chit chat and jump into the ranking. At number 23, aka dead last, I have 2022's Pinocchio. Robert Zemeckis' Pinocchio is really the cultivation of all the worst aspects of these Disney live action remakes. It is completely and totally soulless. It has dodgy, questionable, kind of creepy CGI with potty humor thrown in, none of the heart. And they didn't even adjust some of the worst aspects of the film. Instead, the adjustments they make don't make nearly as much sense. There's really just nothing redeeming about Pinocchio. Coming in at number 22, I have Alice Through the Looking Glass. I really don't like almost anything about this Alice in Wonderland sequel. We basically have someone doing their best Tim Burton impression. The performances are okay at best, but the family squabbles and conflicts over cakes and tarts that lead to a Red Queen redemption arc. Yeah, no, I didn't need it. I didn't want it. And sitting through this sequel was a complete slog. Coming in at number 21, I have The Jungle Book Mowgli's Story. Now, this was a direct to DVD, direct to video 90s film that is basically The Jungle Book. It's pretty much a similar story to The Jungle Book that we all know and love. So I'm not really sure why it's called Mowgli's Story, as if it really presents anything different than The Jungle Book. But in 90s fashion, it is real life animals, because, they didn't have the CG budget, I suppose, whose mouths don't move or anything. We just have famous actors lending their voice. But it's just not as charming as the animated film. It's not funny. Although we have an all-star cast, a lot of the voice work doesn't really work. And you can certainly see why it was a direct-to-home video release, and why a lot of people don't even remember it exists. At number 20, we have The Lion King, one of the biggest disappointments on this entire list, because it takes one of the biggest, most beloved of the films here and sucks every ounce of soul out of it. The Lion King is the perfect example of what not to do, what we don't want. Disney taking all of the wrong messages from the success of these live action remakes. Yeah, the animals look real, but they also can't emote or express. The voice work does not match up with the animals at all. And most of the voice work is rather uninspired. None of the songs hold a candle to the original recordings from the 1994 classic, particularly Be Prepared, which is delivered as some sort of weird spoken word piece. The only thing that puts this above some of the others here on the list is that the CG work is actually impressive. In that regard, it does look stunning, particularly the backgrounds and the environments look amazing. And there are some moments here, but by and large, it is a complete and total inferior copycat almost exactly beat for beat from the animated classic. At number 19, I have 1994's The Jungle Book. Yeah, we've gotten a lot of Jungle Book remakes over the year. Talking animals and a little boy, I guess that makes for an easy film. But this 1994 iteration has some stuff to love. I actually think that the fact that the animals don't speak is a real testament and works much better here. And the fact that Mowgli is still able to communicate with them is a real delight. But the main problem, this serves more as a Tarzan film than it does a Jungle Book film. I mean, we have Jane and everything right here. He's an adult. He doesn't speak to the animals really, and it doesn't follow the story of the Jungle Book like at all. He just kind of like names the animals. It's like, oh, that's Blue. Be scared of Shere Khan. You don't want to mess with King Louie. But it takes us out far too seriously. And so the kind of humorous little bits don't land as much, but hey, who doesn't love a young Carrie Elwes and Lena Headey? At number 18, I have 102 Dalmatians. So the premise of this film is absolutely ridiculous, but Disney back in the day was not scared to let a villain be a villain, because although we start redeeming Cruella de Vil, she still lets her true spots come forth. Unfortunately, we don't even like follow the original couple from 101 Dalmatians. It's kind of an offshoot with one of the puppies, but it's not really well explained. The puppies are still cute, all of the dogs are still cute, and Glenn Close is back for a completely unhinged, wonderfully delightful performance as Cruella. But other than her, none of the human characters are interesting at all. However, on the opposite end of the Jungle Book, it doesn't take itself seriously at all. It knows exactly what it is and leans into the madness, which I can appreciate. Riding in at number 17, we have Oz, the Great and Powerful. Sam Raimi's somewhat whimsical, very dark imagining of the origins of the great and powerful Oz. There's a lot I actually really do enjoy in this film. A lot of the visuals still look good to this day. I still love the porcelain doll and that entire community. I think that's really inventive and a beautiful thing to bring in from the books that's not really in The Wizard of Oz. Rachel Weisz and Michelle Williams are both lovely, and of course, the story itself is a lot of fun. Fortunately, James Franco is a bit underwhelming as our lead, and Mila Kunis, oh my goodness, one of her worst performances probably. I find her Wicked Witch to be just insufferable. It's all a little bit too dark, it's all a little bit too bland, and much like we'll be discussing through most of these films, it lacks the actual wonder and whimsy, but it's certainly not the worst offering they've brought forth. Fighting into number 16, I have Mulan. I actually think there is a lot to love about Mulan. Particularly, all of the acting is quite good. I thought the action was really fun and empowering. The cinematography is also very nice. The costume work is beautiful, and even the production design is quite nice. And the original score is fantastic. However, Mulan commits a real sin in changing the source material for the worse by making Mulan this superhero, this like destiny character, rather than a merit-based character. That's what makes Mulan so special in the original film. It's all based off of her own effort and work. And this film, in an attempt to, I don't really know, make her special, strips her of that. Not to mention, it really leans too heavily into those cut action sequences. Also, cutting our main male love interest was a huge disservice. I know why they did it, and I think it was a completely wrong decision. So, overall, Mulan is a mixed bag with some great positives, but one that sits on a rotted core that really undermines the entirety of the film itself. At number 15, I have Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. Oh, these Maleficent films are so frustrating. We'll talk about the first one here soon. But speaking on Mistress of Evil, Every time they lean into dark fantasy, I loved it. It was great. When we actually got Michelle Pfeiffer v. Angelina Jolie, oh, my little mind exploded. I loved it so much. And the costume designs are fantastic. Some of the most beautiful costumes in any of these live action remakes. Unfortunately, it's tonally a complete and total mess because while it has these wonderful aspects of dark fantasy, it swings to really kind of campy, light, bright mess that does not work. Plus, we spend so much time with like this Fae lore that I honestly couldn't really care less about. So at the end of the day, it led to a viewing experience that gave me whiplash, and honestly, one that I didn't remember much long after leaving the theater. Sliding in at number 14, I have Alice in Wonderland. So Tim Burton and his cast of usual suspects in this film do a lot really well, particularly Helena Bonham Carter as the Red Queen. Fantastic. Johnny Depp is also quite good as the Mad Hatter, and Mia is a delight as our titular Alice. Plus, we have some segments, some moments, some visuals that look absolutely stunning and inventive, beautiful. Unfortunately, it's all shrouded in this heavy darkness that weighs the entire film down. Instead of giving us bright, wonderful whimsy, it's more just kind of Tim Burton weirdness in Wonderland. And it all comes to head with this Jabberwocky battle at the end. It's actually quite the conflicting message of like, we have to end war by going to war. To be honest, I didn't really need ironclad warrior version of Alice from Alice in Wonderland. Soaring in at number 13, I have Dumbo. What can I say? I have a particular infinity for elephants. I have a particular infinity for Dumbo, the original film. And this one pulled at my heartstrings just enough to elevate it above all the rest. I don't think this is a very popular opinion because I think most people have Dumbo near the bottom of their list. But oh my gosh, if Tim Burton did not give us an absolutely adorable, charming, wonderful live action version of Dumbo, that little baby elephant completely stole my heart watching this film, and his connection to the kids was beautiful. I couldn't help but fall in love with him. Also, Danny DeVito is so much fun. Colin Farrell is great. The children actors are also a delight. Unfortunately, Tim Burton and his script here just took us so far off the path of what the movie is about. We don't get nearly enough time with Dumbo and Jumbo, his mother. We could have used a lot more time even with Dumbo and these kids, since that was the replacement for the mouse here and kind of the new replacement for the heart of the film. And we spend far too much time on this amusement park, and oh my gosh, everything to do with Michael Keaton's character and creating this mega park that exploits Dumbo was just far too much. A circus would have done just fine. Because honestly, stretching a film that barely clocks in at an hour to over 2 hours long is literally criminal. At number 12, I have Beauty and the Beast. This one is a particular grudge, I will admit, because Beauty and the Beast is my favorite animated film of all time, and they just didn't do it service with this live action retelling. Now, I think all of our actors are actually quite good. Particularly, I loved Luke Evans as Gaston. I actually quite liked Josh Gad as LeFou, and I'm glad they brought the implicit to the forefront with that relationship, though Disney gave themselves far too much credit for what was actually put to the screen. And Beauty and the Beast definitely holds the crown when it comes to production design specifically, because these sets are spectacular. None of the other Disney princess films have even come close to capturing the absolute magic that they were able to create here in Beauty and the Beast. When it comes to the castle, when it comes to the town, these actually felt like lush, lived in places. It's beautiful, just stunning to look at. Unfortunately, Everything else doesn't really work. While I think Emma Watson was a good choice as Belle for the acting portion, ooh, that singing. Honestly, the singing across the board is not very good. And it leads to all of these big, grand, amazing musical numbers falling flat. The character designs across the board are off putting. And the added story and the backstory and this all seeing globe to see into the past is just ridiculous. The story additions don't work, they're unnecessary. A little bit here, a little bit there to flesh out Belle's backstory would have done just fine. And instead, they took it way overboard and gave us more information than we needed, than we wanted, and just led to me personally being quite bored. Swashbuckling into the number 11 position, I have Peter Pan and Wendy. The latest Disney Plus release from the Disney live action branch. So David Lowery gives us a second fairy tale live action reimagining. And well, this one is decidedly the worst of the two. Peter Pan and Wendy gives us beautiful visuals from David Lowery. He gives us stunning cinematography. The camera work is amazing. It's really a well crafted film. It's a nicely mounted piece of filmmaking. The acting across the board is okay, though nothing great, outside of Jude Law, who really is having a good time. The visuals themselves, the color palette is stunning, but much like the rest of these films, there's no magic. Even as we have fairy dust and Tinkerbell and giant crocodiles and floating ships, the themes are there, the pieces are all here, but the wonder is missing. And that's coming from someone who doesn't really like the original Peter Pan like at all. I actually think it's highly overrated and is near the bottom of my animated Disney ranking. But unfortunately, Lowry just kind of delivered a very pretty but lifeless imitation. So, kicking off our top 10, at number 10, I have Maleficent. Oh, one of the most frustrating of all these remakes. Maleficent was the first one to give us a villain story, except it didn't give us a villain story. Oh, the beginning of this film is absolutely perfect. Everything to do with the actual story from Sleeping Beauty is perfection. Angelina Jolie was pitch perfect casting for the role of Maleficent, and she devours the evilness that this character brings to the screen with joyful glee. And then they make Maleficent a fairy godmother, a protector of Aurora, and ultimately she's the good guy. They took one of the most iconic Disney villains and ripped away all of her claws, ripped away all of her edges. The visuals look wonderful. Angelina is great, even as she makes that transformation. I also think Elle Fanning is quite a lovely Aurora. The action set pieces are a lot of fun. The fantasy elements work for me. But the retconning of Maleficent being a villain is just so disappointing. Not to mention the whole rape allegory was very cringe. I think that was a mistake across the board. The depiction of the fairies is also questionable. So, for all the deliciously evil fun, there are just too many changes that dilute the original character to put this up any higher. Yes, the new iconic look and all, it's number 10. Barking their way to number 9, I have Lady and the Tramp. This was just a really quaint, lovely film. There's not much to it. It doesn't really change the original animated film in any sort of significant way. The voice acting is lovely. The live action acting is also lovely, but it's not exciting. It doesn't do anything to warrant its existence. And the CG is on the verge of disturbing, particularly the little mouse moving. I kind of wish they had just not had their mouse move and just done the voiceovers like the earlier Jungle Book we talked about, because they used real dogs here, which is great, and they used rescue dogs, which is great, but the CG to move their mouths was absolutely terrible. In some instances, some of the CG animals in here are actually nightmare fuel. But at the end of the day, the biggest crime is that after watching this live action version of Lady and the Tramp, I thought I could have just watched the original and had a much better time. Wishing its way into the number 8 position, I have Aladdin. Now we were all scared when we saw those set promos because woo, the design on Genie looked rough. And in the film, he still does kind of look rough. However, Will Smith was the huge surprise because I actually thought his Genie was a lot of fun. He took a completely different approach and it worked. A great way to distance yourself from huge comparison to an iconic role that can't be lived up to. And in doing so, Will Smith created his own really likable, enjoyable version of the genie. I thought Manny Musad was a delightful Aladdin, and Naomi Scott was absolutely divine as Jasmine, with a beautiful singing voice to match. Unfortunately, the film falls victim to several issues. First off, the action set pieces are actually filmed like a Guy Ritchie film. We have these hard cuts. The frame rate is very weird. Like one jump ahead gave me a headache trying to keep up as we worked through. Then we have Maina Musad, who's not the best singer. So him singing some of these songs, or even Will Smith trying to sing some of these songs, not great. It feels like it's on a stage studio as well. So as I talked about with Beauty and the Beast, how beautiful and vast and lived in it all feels. Aladdin felt parsed down. And this is the one we actually go through an entire made up city. And it literally feels like we're just watching a soundstage. And the music as well, it all feels parsed down. It's not big and grand and full like the original versions. And then we get to something like A Whole New World, and oh my gosh, the magic is just gone. It is this horrible blue brown color palette, a complete and total downgrade from the original sequence. So while we add this lovely new character who's friends with Jasmine and has this nice relationship with Genie that adds to the film, we also get new princes that get screen time and such that are annoying and terrible. And then we have Jafar, who's probably worst of all, a complete butchering of the character. He's horrible. Swimming in to number 7, I have The Little Mermaid. Yes, the latest Disney live action remake and the latest Disney Renaissance remake, because those are the ones that make the big bucks. The Little Mermaid is pretty close to Aladdin for me. Actually, they have a lot of similar issues in my eyes, but I think at the end of the day, The Little Mermaid stands on its own better than Aladdin is able to. First off, we have Halle Bailey, who can sing, who can deliver the vocals that are needed. Oh, you see what happens when you cast someone with a great voice as well as great acting chops for a musical role? Also, the film retains some of the charm and actually makes changes that add to the story. We get more time to flesh out the romance, which is a great development. Not to mention the fun is still there. Sebastian is still a good time, as uncanny and scary as his design is. Daveed Diggs saves the day with that great vocal take. Prince Eric and Ariel have amazing chemistry that really sells the film by and large. Unfortunately, like Aladdin, every song outside of Part of Your World is just kind of a downgrade. None of them are as lush. None of the other singers can hold a candle to the original vocalist. As much as I love Daveed Diggs and how great he is in the role, he just doesn't have the vocal chops. Melissa McCarthy can't hang when it comes to Poor Unfortunate Souls, and honestly can't really hang when it comes to Ursula by and large. Javier Bardem is terrible, and all of the visual effects just are rough. Anything underwater looks really bad to me, and then we get to that final battle with Ursula, and it looks absolutely terrible. So there is magic, there is fun to be had, but there were still so many problems I had with The Little Mermaid. Coming in at number 6, I have 101 Dalmatians. What can I say? I have a lot of fun with this film. Now, I will say, I give a lot of crap to like Ariel and a lot of these other Disney princesses for falling in love so quickly, but they take the cake in this film. This relationship literally happens in a scene and over dogs connecting. Suddenly, we're married. What? Absolutely outrageous and ridiculous. Also, some of the comedic beats are a little bit over the top cheesy, but really, this is the 90s family film incarnate, and it's done so well. For one, we have dogs who emote. How do we have real life animals in this film? Real Dalmatians who give more emotion and reaction than CG animals do in 2019's The Lion King. But these dogs are so freaking cute and their reactions are so perfect. They do such a great job of capturing what needs to be done here without having them talk, which is great. Now, the CG on them, when they have to do like little stunt type things, woo, definitely aged. But the dogs themselves, wonderful. The story is still a lot of fun and has a lot of heart. It's actually quite heartfelt and adorable with a nice message at its core. Obviously, it's pro animal, so I'm pro that message. But obviously, we're here for the main event. Miss Cruella de Vil, played fabulously by Glenn Close. Oh, she's amazing in this film. She chews up that scenery and elevates the entire movie up to my number 6 position. So coming in at number 5, I have Christopher Robin. Now, I know this is probably going to be a hot take because I think there's a lot of people who did not like Christopher Robin, but I was purely enchanted with it. Getting this adult Christopher Robin, played by Ewan McGregor, was wonderful. I loved seeing how the world had kind of bogged him down. And Ewan McGregor played this character so well. This downtrodden guy who had lost his wonder and was slowly being introduced to it through his old childhood friends. Initially, I was a little bit scared for the stuffed animal looking characters that we know and love, Tigger, Pooh, and Eeyore, Piglet, all the gang. But in practice, I thought they were so adorable and so charming, insanely lovable. I found the film to be funny. I found the film to be sweet. I found it to be really charming, maybe just a bit too serious and maybe a bit too heavy. And that's what bogs it down from lifting even higher up on this list. But what can I say? I was charmed right next to Christopher Robin himself. At number 4, I have Cruella. Well, Disney strikes again. They give us another iconic performance from a live action Disney villain, and they don't make her a villain. Now, I will say this, I think she stays a little bit more gray throughout, comparatively to Maleficent. But Cruella is definitely the person we're rooting for in this film, and they even make her rescue and like dogs. So, yeah, I don't know what we're doing here. Disney, let villains be villains. And while I do have quite a problem with that, and I think it is a very weird choice to humanize and empathize Cruella de Vil, the woman who wants to kill puppies for their fur, I can look past it enough when I'm having this much fun. The Emmas are absolutely amazing. Emma Stone is fantastic as Cruella. She stands toe to toe with Glenn Close in this iconic role. And Emma Thompson is deliciously evil and such a delight. The story itself is also quite fun. And the fashions, oh my gosh, absolutely amazing. The makeup, the hair, the dresses, the gowns, the everyday wear, it all just looks fantastic. The set designs are gorgeous. The score and the music is amazing that's used. It captures this punk rock feel wonderfully. What can I say? I had a ball, darling. Bippity boppeting its way into number 3, I have Cinderella. Honestly, this is the most true as true can be actual fairy tale in live action that Disney has produced. Lily James is absolutely delightful as Cinderella, and I love that we get this moral compass to the character that really cements the decisions that she makes and who she is as a person. Not to mention, Richard Madden as Prince Charming is utterly swoon worthy, and I thought they were delightful together with this beautiful chemistry. Cinderella also has, far and away, the best recreation of the iconic gown. Where Beauty and the Beast looks like a Target knockoff, Cinderella looks like the luscious animation brought to life. Of course, Kenneth Branagh brings his usual lush filmmaking, his period piece love to the screen here. And we get one of the best villains in these films with Cate Blanchett as Lady Tremaine, who also is delivering fashion. but she is so evil. And they also give her a backstory that works. Now, what keeps Cinderella from the top positions are kind of the jokey, hokey parts, like Bippity Boppity Boop. Really, Helena Bonham Carter at large is a weird choice, and she didn't really work for me all that much. The really light-hearted stuff doesn't work, and we hammer home the message really hard. But overall, it maintains the spirit of Cinderella and delivers a wonderful, faithful adaptation to the live action medium. At number 2, I have The Jungle Book. Jon Favreau's first foray into the live action version of these animal characters, far and away his more successful version of doing so. Unfortunately, he saw his amazing characters in this film and thought, let's make them even more realistic and less expressive when he did The Lion King. But the Jungle Book is still able to give us characters with these hyper realistic animals. They all look amazing and just like their real life counterparts, but are still able to give you face and serve you emotion. The voice casting is all fantastic, though King Louis is a little odd. I particularly didn't mind him. I will say the songs don't hit in this film like they do in the original. Sorry, Bill Murray. Sorry, Christopher Walken. They just don't do it. But a huge improvement actually is Mowgli. He's much less of a brat in this live action version compared to his animated counterpart. And they changed one of my biggest problems in the animated film, and it's that ending. I really don't like the ending of The Jungle Book, and they change it here, and it's so much better for it. It's beautiful to look at. It has a wonderful message at its core. And honestly, for a straight up remake, I think it's probably the best one they've delivered to date. But for all intents and purposes, on this ranking, it's not quite my number one. That distinguished top spot goes to Pete's Dragon. I don't know if this is a hot take or what. I love Pete's Dragon, and I will not apologize for it. David Lowery's first foray into the live action fantasy world of Disney was the best foray into the medium. Now, this might be a cop out because it's basically the same medium as the original. But that's where we're calling them live action fairy tales, right? Yes, we just replaced one type of animated dragon for another type of animated dragon, but we cut out all the other extra little animations thrown in. Regardless, this is the only one that straight up improves, is 100% better than the film it is remaking. And that's first and foremost why I put it at number 1 here on this list. Even something like The Jungle Book or Cinderella that do a really wonderful job of bringing the animated film to live action, it's still an argument. Is it as good even as the animated original? When it comes to Pete's Dragon, for me, it's a no-brainer. It improves upon that OG Pete's Dragon tenfold. And how is that done? All through art. Honestly, unlike the rest of the films on this list, it pulls back all of the bells and whistles and just gives us this good old-fashioned storytelling that works. It's a tried and true formula. It reminded me of films that I adored growing up in the 90s. A kid with his unlikely animal friend that he protects. We've seen this formula a million times, and David Lowery is able to inject his own magic into the formula with a wonderful child performance, a completely endearing, wonderful dragon, a lovely performance from Bryce Dallas Howard. The score is beautiful. The visual effects are a delight. Honestly, I really don't think there's anything wrong with this film. I think it is the best made film on this list, the most well rounded and fully realized version of a Disney live action fairy tale, akin to the ones they've brought to us so many times in animation. And that is why Pete's Dragon is my pick for the best Disney live action remake fairy tale. So that's it. That's my ranking of the 23 Disney live action remakes and fairy tales. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, click like down below and subscribe to the channel so that you are always up to date on all of my latest videos. Also, join in on the discussion. I know you were probably yelling and screaming at some of these placements, so I want to hear your ranking of these films, either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your continued support. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.